And one second. And I want to make sure that everybody, I'm pretty sure everybody can hear me pretty much loud and clear. I had the speaker on in my office, so I do apologize for that. And just want to make sure everybody, we pretty clear, and I want to just make sure everybody is pretty clear on what they're hearing right now. And we see the announcements that's going up. It will be no verses, no words put in this chat tonight. What we're doing, everybody's in class, so there's no reason for them to be in there because they're in class also. So we want to make sure everybody understand that they will not be seeing no words, no Bible verse, no anything, because we in class. And I do want to make a couple of announcements to make sure that we really clear on this. The deadline for the language class is tomorrow at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I want to make myself clear because the reason why I like to do this a lot of times is for the simple fact is that we, people, us, black people, we have a bad habit of waiting and procrastinating to the last minute. And then the main thing is what we're going to look at this here. You see, Sister Venus putting it up there. If I receive it at 6:01 p.m. tomorrow, if I receive it 6:01 p.m. tomorrow, you will not be accepted. We're not even going to look at your application whatsoever. I'm not here, and don't send me an email saying Fifi got ran over. So I'm letting you guys know right up front because people will send in excuses why they got it in a minute late, 2 hours late, a day late. We will not accept it no other way. So make sure if you want to be in this class, you make sure that you turn it in time because I'm letting you know right now, we're doing from Sinai to today, unpacking biblical law legal framework. So most people think what we're doing in the back and what we're going to be doing in the class, which will not be ever on YouTube or any other platform, it would never be shown there. But we got to understand the difference between the frameworks and what we're teaching in the back. So I want to take some time and I want to explain some of that to you to where people understand exactly what I'm talking about. And what you want to make sure of is a couple of things. 1 second, I want to make sure a couple of things was there. What we want to make sure is we understand how everything is going and how we can get a lot more understanding. Because from Sinai to biblical law framework, as we dive into this rich wisdom and find this divine guidance that's found in the King James Bible, which is encompassed the entire Bible, so we know that the Apocrypha is there. These studies, we're going to embark on a serious journey. So if we see people, the same thing is, I'm going to be letting those moderators know, if we see people in there posting up just anything silly, I'm not asking you to remove the comments, but I'm going to be asking to remove you. Because the main thing is, people like to go to other channels and then they like to take this more so as a game. And I'm very serious about what I do, and we're not here to play these types of games. We're not here to sit there to play little things to where people can go back and forth. So we're here to where we're going to learn, and this is something that we don't normally push out, never push out, but the main thing is it's going to show you how to do certain things. So what I want to do, I want to show you something where we're going to start finding out a few things on what you need to do and what you need to learn and understand. Because what I want you to understand is this, and make sure each and every person, you guys write this down, because if you don't write it down and then later on you ask me in class, I'm going to tell you right now, you have a 100% chance I'm going to remove you. Because I don't look for people to keep repeating the same thing and you choose not to write it down. So what I want you to do is write down framework. I want you to write down framework for it. And I'm going to end up showing you this also, but I want you to understand what framework is. So make sure everybody got this down, framework. In framework, we're going to sit there as a lecture format. I'm going to be telling you what it is, and then I'm going to show you some examples of what it is. But the main thing is you still need to make sure you take the note. So framework is a concrete conceptual platform. That's what framework is. And it's commonly to where it's a generic layout to show you the functionality that can be selective. And it specializes and overrides by its users, meaning framework. Framework often it'll facilitate a specific task. It can have several related tasks that's tied to this. So it's just like, for example, like a scaffold. If you're going out there and you're building a house, you can be like a scaffold for developers to build a working model of like a house. So we take this house for the example in the housing development. It can have numerous frameworks there. So with these frameworks, we got to put what frameworks actually is. And those are such things like we need concrete to pour the foundation. We need wood. We need doors. We need windows. These are frameworks. These are frameworks and etc. But these provide the elements. So the framework need elements to create the house. Again, I'm going to say it again. Framework need elements to create the house or the houses. These elements are pre-known. They're pre-known as frameworks, and they can save developers a significant amount of time because they know what all was needed to build that house. Did everybody understand that? Everybody understand? Don't ask me to repeat anything, but everybody understand it. Because I know some people can't repeat it. No, this is recorded. So do everybody understand that? Because we're going to be going into a lot of deep water. We're going to go into a lot of deep things, and we're going to get a lot of good understanding. So that's the point on what we want to do. We want to make sure that we're understanding something, but it's going to be an exciting time for what we're doing. Very exciting for what we're doing. So make sure that you clearly understand what's going on. And I'm going to still show you this. I'm going to still show you this. Now I want you guys to write down architecture. I'm going to end up showing it to you to where you can see it. Architecture. So the architecture is what we're going to be doing in the classes. It's not part of this. So architecture, on this other hand, is more about a higher level structure of the house. And I'm going to explain that to you, why it's so important to be part of the class more so than this framework. See, the class and then this framework, which you see the architecture of the house, is the blueprint. That's what the architect is, the blueprint. It defines how the different elements in each part will meet and marry each other, and it describes the principles, the guidelines, and the constraints around the house that is built. That's the difference of the architecture. Architecture can also concern something that's specific as the design to a single entryway. This is what architecture will do. Or as a broad design, it can sit there and talk about the entire room or the entire access of a level of the house. So this includes the aspect of the stairs, design, the functionality, and how the modular structure, it has a relationship, the interaction between the level of the house. While framework, keep in mind, framework is the specific implementation that is reusable elements that you can use to build a house. Architecture is the overreaching side that's designed the structure, is that guide the construction of a house project. Did everybody understand that? See, when we start playing with people and then you sitting there saying you understand it and later on you don't understand it, we will have a problem. Because I told you, a lot of us like to walk around with pride. And then they'll say they understand it, but then they really didn't understand it. But I want to make sure everybody understood that. So I'm just checking right now because we're going to start going into some things. We're going to start going into a few things. Okay, we got a couple of ends in here. So what I want you to do with the ends, okay, so the same thing is, I don't want you guys to worry about the ends because we got more than two or three ends. So what I want to do, I want one person to start putting in, okay, did you understand the relationship or the framework, or did you not understand the relationship or the architecture? If you didn't understand the framework or the architecture or the framework, just put A, or you just put in there, somebody just put in a short thing there, what part you didn't understand, so I can clear it up for you. That's what I want to do. We don't want nobody to be lost. So I just want somebody. So most people saying they didn't understand the architecture. So you didn't understand the architecture. Okay. So I just want to make sure that if someone, most people didn't understand the architecture. Okay. So let me go through, because everybody putting in A. A lot of people putting in A where they didn't understand the architecture. So for me and you to be on the same page, what I'm seeing is people didn't understand architecture. If we can agree with that, just put in I. If you didn't understand architecture, just put in I, and I can re-explain it, and I can go a little bit deeper with it. So if we put in I, then I know that what you're talking about. Okay, I see I, exactly. Okay, so that's what's going on. All right. So let me re-explain these again, and then we'll go down deeper. So we'll go down again. Okay, so let's go through this again. We're going to go through this again, and you're going to see I'm going to explain it even more detail as we continually go through the day's teaching. So what we're looking at, I want you to understand framework. When we're looking at framework, each and every person, when we're looking at the framework is the pieces, the elements. We want to start holding on to that, because I'm going to be using that terminology quite a bit in these lessons. So the framework are the elements that is needed to build a house. The framework is the things that are needed to build a house. So that's why I said, like the concrete, that's an element. The concrete is like an element. It's needed for to be the foundation of the house. The wood will put up the structure of the house. You need the doors, the windows, you need the electricians, you need all these things to where these are elements, and now you'll be seeing me using that quite a bit. You see that we'll start using those to build the house. That's the framework. So when we go look at a house, and sometimes you might get some time, go outside and you look at, and you see the framework on what it took to make the house. Or you just walk through your house and you look at the framework that was needed. You see light fixtures, you see windows covering, you see doors, you see door jambs, you see the fire, I forgot what they call them, the fire alarm thing. I forgot what you call it. You see the heater, you see the air conditioner unit, you see the carpet, you see tile, you see all these things. Don't look at those things as pieces needed. Those are elements. Those are the framework that was required to put together the house. Everybody with me? And I just need one or two eyes to go there, and I can keep moving. So those are the things, that's the framework that's needed to build a house. That's the framework. And we seeing how the legal framework goes. I appreciate it. So everybody, I got enough of them now, so we can just keep moving. So now we want to understand more so architecture, the architecture of it. So now the architecture is this. The architecture, on the other hand, the architecture is the blueprint. We got to understand what the blueprint. Now the blueprint defines what different elements of each part, how they will meet and marry to each other. So the blueprint is going to show you how the wood is going to be tied. Is it going to be fastened to concrete? Is the wood going to be fastened to drywall? Is the wood going to have places to run through electricity? Because this is the blueprint. So we have to look at the blueprint of the architecture to where we'll know how everything is going to come together. It's the guidelines and it's the principles that's going to be needed to build a house. So the framework, you get workers to do the framework, but the architecture is coming from one person. Architecture is coming from one person, and it's designed with the functionality and the modular structure with the relationship and the interaction between the level of the house. So the architect can sit there and say, I want the house, the second level, to be connected only by the stairs. I only want it connected by the stairs. Then it will be connected by the stairs itself. That's where we'll sit there and we'll look at those. We'll sit there and we'll see those happening. Or you can sit there and say, we're going to tell you what, this house is only going to be connected through through an elevator system. That's the only way they can get to the second floor is through the elevator system. This is based on architecture and is based on the architect that has designed it all. That's the point on what's going on. That's why we see this thing is happening the way it is. Now, as we sit there and see that, see some people starting to say they understand what's going on. So you got the architect who's sitting there giving you the blueprint on how all the elements and pieces going to come together. But the framework is just all the pieces that is used. But the architect is saying, okay, this is going to connect to this is going to connect to that. The window's going to go here. The architect saying the window's going to, you're going to have one going to sit on the north. You got another one going to sit on the south. You got another one going to sit on the east. And then the framework is the workers who's going to put everything together. Everybody with me? Everybody with me? Like everybody, do everybody understand this thus far? So let's look at something. We're going to look at the whiteboard, and we want to see how this kind of works out, and then we're going to start getting a little bit deeper with this. So when we look at this, we see architecture, and we see this here to where you can write it down, or you can later on we can get this from out of SharePoint. And it's telling you the architecture is the blueprint that defines how different elements of each part will meet and marry each other. That's what it's for. That's the architect. So the architecture is what's being put together. But then when we look at the framework are the elements pre-known to build the houses: concrete, wood, doors, windows, etc. Everybody with me? Everybody with me? This is why I say this is going to be a highly educational day today. Highly educational day today. So as we look at this, we understand a couple of things. So what we're going to do, we're going to learn about the framework. Outside of here, we're going to be learning about framework. The most important part is the class that I'll be doing. We're going to be learning the architecture back there. That's where you're going to get your big time, your big steaks, your tomahawk steaks and stuff. That's where you're gonna get all that from that class in the back. Because if you don't go in the class in the back that we're going to be offering, then that's on you. But that's where the questions can come up, because the framework is not going to offer you the architecture, because you need to be part of the architecture to understand what's going on with the framework. So that's what's going on. So now we're going to need to focus on the scriptures that serve as something else. So when you focus on scripture, it serves as the ultimate source. So now I want you to see something where we'll look at this. So when you're looking at the ultimate source, we're going to put a couple of things there. I'm going to put a couple of things there, and we're going to put this here. So give me a little time. And so we, I thought I had it. I thought I typed it in there. Now it's typing in. So we got that there, but we want to make sure this is there. So this is the ultimate source. So actually we're going to look at this architecture. So we're going to put this here. I'm trying to get something. It won't come over. Oh, there we go. The other one wouldn't come over, so that's okay. So we're looking at this ultimate source. Ultimate source, we're still looking at the architecture that's coming from the architect. The architecture that's coming from the architect. We're going to start dealing with scriptures, and you're going all this stuff going to make so much sense to you, it's going to be unreal. So now, what we want to understand is this. We got another one here we got to look at. And just to see where people's heads at, we're going to see something. We're looking at spiritual truths. So tell me, most people sit there and say, where do spiritual truths go? Is spiritual truth with the architecture, or spiritual truth with the framework? That's where the keys and everything goes. So what is this saying? So we know that spiritual truth is not part of the architecture. Spiritual truth is part of the framework. It's not part of the architecture. That's why this gets so much serious, where so many people will go offline and not understand what's going on. So the framework contains spiritual truths. To make it same thing as truth, it has elements. That's why it's spiritual truth. Elements is such as the concrete, the wood, the doors, the windows. Those are spiritual truths to where we can get really to understand more so to how to flip things spiritually to get a better understanding. The architecture is already in the blueprint. This is already the blueprint, but we need the elements to find out what those spiritual truths are, because that's what is contained in there. So we got to see the same thing as what it goes. So the elements is what's being used. So it's often only the moral teachings and the comprehensions, the framework for a man to conduct like his social order. It encompasses the principles and extend beyond the legalistic rules, reaching the depths of the soul, inviting to align us in God's wisdom. So as we're going to continually embark on this. We're going to continually dig on this, and then we'll sit there and we'll realize that the biblical law goes beyond the mere set of worldly regulations. Because we're looking at worldly regulations, but we flipping on spiritually. So the spiritual guide unveiled the nature of God and his desires to Israel. So it provides what? So for us to get those, he's going to provide the framework. The framework is the spiritual truths, the elements, meaning this. So he's going to provide the spiritual truth, the elements, justice, righteousness, harmonious living within the text in the relationship with who? With Jehovah. That's what this is doing. That's why it's so important to pay attention to what's happening here. That's why this is going to go through a lot of places and help us. So with this inclusion of a bridge, which helps us also, is why so many people is believing in false doctrine, and they're keeping people away from that bridge everything together. Meaning, this is why a lot of people don't sit there and look at the Apocrypha, even though the Apocrypha was part of the Bible from the originality, but it was removed. It was illegally removed. But now, in our own exploration, it's the only way we can add the extra layers to the depth of our understanding of biblical law. These writings offer serious spiritual truths. It's right there. Why? Because those elements is coming from, you see a lot of us always use the elements from where? We're using from Sirach, we're using from Wisdom of Solomon, we're going to Baruch, we're going to all these different books, because we're getting spiritual truth, these elements to reflect on godly justice. And then we also see the consequences of men in the actions that this had this transformative power of obedience of God's commandments. So this is why you understanding the front of this, it's going to help out a lot of people in one way. But when you want to get to the real meat of it, you need to be in the class. And we're going to keep building on this, because we're going to go through some scriptures. And you're going to see how all this plays in the place. So throughout this study, we got to strive to uncover the spiritual meanings underneath the text. Underneath the text. Actually, I'll put that up there. So we got to find out what's underneath. So what we're looking at here is underneath the text. So you tell me, where do underneath, I got something wrong. 1 second. Didn't spell it correctly. Underneath the text. That's what we need. So what do underneath the text mean? What do it mean? See, that's the catch again. We need to know what this word actually means. Because we got to go underneath the text. So we're going underneath the text, guess what? That ties you again. To the architecture. It ties us again to the architecture. Right there. Because we got to go underneath the text. We got to look at the blueprint. We can't look at the framework. Those are spiritual truths. So we have to go underneath the text, and this is why you see where most people say, well, she's a spiritual teacher. Yeah, because we got to go underneath the text. I'm showing you the architecture, and most times I teach the architecture of the text. That's what I do. So we understand that because it's the ultimate source to where you can get the actual truth from God's word. Did everybody understand what I'm just saying? Everybody understanding what I'm saying? Because we're going to keep moving down. We're going to keep moving down. So everybody understanding that? Okay, good. So we understanding what's going on. This is going to help you out a great deal. This is going to help you out a great deal. The class is going to help you out even more. So now we want to understand this. We want to look at what precepts. Same thing as precepts. We have to take the same thing. We got to look at precepts here. So as we look at precepts, we're going to pull each and everything in here, but we want to know what they mean. So we want to know what precepts are. Precepts is not the architecture. Precepts is the spiritual truths and what we need. So I gotta take this down some. Well, it's the same thing. I'm not finna sit there and cry over that. So we know this is the framework. Precepts is the spiritual truth. That's why I'm saying precepts. Architecture is coming from one thing, but the framework can come from many things. Those are the elements used. Precepts is the elements used. It's recognizing the principles we encounter having profound implication of today's lives. So as we seek to uncover the spiritual truths, as what it's saying right there, those are the elements used. Actually, I need to put the elements used there, so we won't keep getting mixed up. So we won't get mixed up. So we'll use. So we'll do that. So we'll do this here. We'll do that. So we know the frameworks is the elements used. Precepts, spiritual truths, those are the elements being used. So this transcends time, it transcends culture, it's recognizing timeless relevance in our abilities to guide us and navigate us through the complexities even into this modern world. That's what that does. So once we understand this journey of the legal and biblical law framework in the elements used is not simply an academic pursuit. It removes that. And it's an invitation to help you deepen your relationship with God, to where it aligns our lives and to where we can dive into this deeper order in this embodiment that values the virtuous and that reflects his character. That's what this does for us. That now our exploration of the scriptures can ignite our passion and the divine justice, the righteousness that transform the power and the spiritual truth in our lives. So now we can embark and we can go on this journey together to where we can open our hearts, our minds, to where we can seek to uncover the profound, exactly those elements, those spiritual truths of the framework that's contained within the framework of the biblical law, these elements used. So now these studies bring us closer to where we can empower and exemplify his truth. That's what it's for. In the spiritual clarity, it's selected biblical texts. And we're going to select biblical texts, and I'm going to show it to you right now. So what we want to do, we want to go to biblical texts, and we want to look at some of this. We want to start using this to understand what's going on. We're going to see this, and we're going to see the biblical framework and the elements used. We'll see this, and we're going to go to Deuteronomy chapter 14. We're going to start at verse 22. We're going to see how far we can go with this. We're going to see how far we can get. And we're going to look at something. It says, thou shalt truly tithe. You should truly tithe all thy increase of thy seed, that the field bringeth forth year by year. Period. That's a full stop there. So what we got to do is also look at, and you visualize in your mind of a scale and balance. You can visualize the scale or a balance of this. But what we're looking at is the biblical framework of biblical law, the elements used. So what elements is being used? It says, thou shalt truly tithe all thy increase of thy seed is the field that bring forth year by year. It's telling you about elements being used in this lesson. So it's telling us something spiritually, and we should dedicate something there. So he's telling you we got to sit there. We got to dedicate our portion. We got to dedicate the elements being used, and what he's telling us, we have to dedicate our portion of fruits, and those fruits of work and our offering of the Lord each year. It teaches us the importance of giving back to Jehovah, the Spirit of God, acknowledging the abundance that we receive. The seed symbolized the word which we have grown in, what we grown from, and where we can now carnally see in our fields. It tells us this. It shows it to us. So these shows our works, our efforts. Same thing as it goes through. These fruits is an increase. It represents the fruits, our works, our blessings. And the results from it, we're instructed to dedicate a portion, a tithe, a portion, this element, this tithe of our works, the fruits, to the Lord. And the reason why he always says this in 1 Timothy, actually it's 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 15. He says this, and he's going to always check us on it. In 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 15, it says, study to show thyself approved, a workman that needeth not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. That's why it's going to get so key in what need to be going on. Because these fruits, these works, you have to know what's going on. But we have a lot of people who will sit there and tell you all kind of crazy things. They get into all kind of crazy stuff and not showing you what it is. Now, what we got to do is pay more attention to what we're doing, because we got to show ourselves approved with the abundance of our harvest. We have to show ourselves approved with the abundance of our harvest. We have to, again, I'm going to say it again, we have to show ourselves approved with the abundance of our harvest. Now, this is the catch. This is the catch. Whether it be good or bad. Whether it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. So we have to understand it draws the connection with the other verses supporting the biblical laws of tithing. It shows the biblical laws of tithing. As a visual example, we can look at the arm of heaven, which brings into a storehouse. It shows you even more. Let's look at something. We're going to go over here to Malachi chapter 3, but we're going to pour these in, and we're going to pull them in together to get a better understanding of what's happening. Malachi chapter 3, but we're going to look at verse 10. And he's telling us something right here, which ties us back to Deuteronomy. But it says, bring you all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in my house. So they got to be doctrine in his house to prove me now, wherewith said the Lord, the Spirit of God of hosts, if I will not open the window, another element of heaven, and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive. He's telling you something that's right up front. So now this emphasizing the importance of bringing tithes. So you got to bring your tithe. If you got one little tithe, you bring that tithe. You bring that one tithe. You bring that portion to the Lord's house. It's indicating the spiritual meat, the spiritual bread, and doing this faithfully, we open ourselves for the spiritual blessing of God in abundance. It's plain and simple, straightforward. Everybody understand what I'm saying? See, this is where we have to get to, because now we know that God gives the increase. We know he gives the increase there. So if he gives the increase as Abraham, because we know that his iniquities, we know his iniquities was forgiven. Anything that Abraham have done, I'm going to prove the point that it was forgiven, and the sin was not imputed to Abraham. So now we got to look at one thing. Was it based on circumcision or uncircumcision of Abraham? Was it based on circumcision or uncircumcision? We got to look at the framework. We got to understand framework. This is what we have to do. If we understand the framework, we can understand, was it based on circumcision or uncircumcision? But let's look at something. We're going to go over here to Romans. We're going to look at chapter 4, but we're going to go down to verse 9. We're going to look at 9 and we're going to see something there. We're going to go to 9, but I'm going to take you down to verse 12. So I'm going to highlight all of this up to verse 12. And we're going to see what it says here to get a better understanding. It says, cometh this blessedness that upon circumcision only, or upon the uncircumcision also. He's doing the same thing. And he's going to also use Abraham as an example. Watch what he says here. He says, or upon uncircumcision also. For we say that faith was reckoned. See, faith was reckoned to Abraham for righteousness. How was it then reckoned? So how did it happen? Did it happen through circumcision or uncircumcision? Which one did it happen through? He's telling you, he putting this right before. He says, not in circumcision, but in uncircumcision. That's when it happened. Excuse me. That's when this happened. It happened in uncircumcision. It says, and he received the sign of circumcision, a seal of the righteousness of the faith which he had yet been uncircumcised carnally, that he might be the father of all them that believe, though they be not circumcised, that righteousness might be imputed unto them also, including the father of circumcision, to them who are not of the circumcision only, but to who walk in the steps of that faith of our father Abraham, which he had been yet uncircumcised. Uncircumcised. So what he's telling you, Paul is discussing this relationship between faith and righteousness, circumcision, using Abraham, and he's demonstrating that righteousness is not based on his circumcision. It wasn't based on circumcision, but it was based on being what most people would say. Well, most people always sit there and think is based on this physical sign showing righteousness. This is what people teach. But his righteousness was based on his faith in God. Abraham's faith was accredited to him as righteousness even before he was circumcised. Paul explains this. Paul explains this. So now we see as Abraham is regarded as the father of both the circumcised, the followers of Christ, the Jews, and the uncircumcised of the mind. Not of the, see, because most people say, see, they want to hold Gentiles as Gentiles, saying he's talking about everybody, and that's not the truth. He's talking about Gentiles of the mind, which you'll see in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 2. So we got to follow in the footsteps of faith according to the Spirit, and according to faith, not according to flesh. I'm going to show you something. Let's go here. Let's look at something a little bit more. Let's go to Romans chapter 9. And we're going to look at something in verse 8. Because he says this clearly here. He's making sure we can clearly understand what elements is being missed. It says, that is, they which are the children of the flesh. These are not the children of God, but the children of the promise accounted for the seed. He's telling us exactly what's going on. So we see back here in Malachi chapter 3, when we're looking at verse 10. We want to pull this up there. I thought I had it. Yeah, Malachi 3, verse 10. I knew I had it over one place. So when he says this here, he's telling us right up front. It says, bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse. All the tithes into the storehouse. So we see in this here, we have to see, on the other hand, where it addresses the practicing of tithing. It's telling us about our portion. It instructs the followers to bring their tithe, their portion, their tenth that they produce into the storehouse. Their storehouse is the prepared vessel for knowledge. It's telling us that right up front. How do we know this? Because we sit there when you go through Scripture and you hold in the laws as what we see, we understand the Bible a lot better. So when we look at 1 Corinthians chapter 3, but we go down to verse 16, it tells us, and it makes sure he clarifies this. So his storehouse is the body. Know ye not that ye are the temple of God, and the temple of God dwelleth in you, and the Spirit of God dwelleth in you. He's telling you that, and you have to bring all those portions that he's pouring out to you. You have to bring those into the storehouse. He's making sure what's going on. He's making sure we understand this. Everybody understand me thus far? Everybody understand me thus far? That's what I want to know. Do everybody understand me thus far? Yeah. Okay. Good. Good. Okay. Good. Okay. So we understand what's going on. We understand how this is working. So as we understanding this, we're getting a better understanding on what is happening. So now with this tithe, because tithe don't mean nothing but your portion. So with this portion, we have to sit there and we have to bring this in. We have to bring this into the storehouse. Good or bad, you don't bring it because you got to make it be known to him to where he can correct it or not correct it. Let's look at something with the tithes. Same thing. We got to see what our portion is. Let's look at this all together. Let's go over here to Isaiah. I want to show you something there to where we can get a better understanding what this tithe is going to do for us. Come on. Okay. We're going to go here, chapter 9, but we want to look at a certain verse. We're going to look at 9, and we're going to go right to verse 6. Now you got to see what our portion is. That's why it says he got to be a prepared vessel for knowledge. It says, for unto us a child is born, is brought forth. That is what our tithe is, this body. And he says, and unto us a son is given. This servant is Christ. And the government should be upon his shoulder. And his name, his way shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. This is making sure we're clear on what we're doing. So when we consider these connections between our faith, our righteousness, and giving. So in Abraham's case, his faith in God was accounted to him as righteousness, which highlights the importance of trust and belief of God's promises. So his faith was not dependent on external factors as a circumcision in that matter. So when you're looking at this in Malachi chapter, I'm gonna go back to Malachi. I should have just left it there. I'm gonna keep referring to it here and there. So when you're looking at Malachi 3 and 10, it's telling you right here again. It's telling you right here. It says, bring you tithes into the storehouse. Bring your portion into the storehouse. He's telling you that right up front. So if that's coming up to you right up front, pay attention to what he says here. When you're looking at this here, we want to pay attention to one more other thing. Look at Romans chapter 12, verse 1. Because he's making sure we clearly get what's going on. Oh, come on. There we go. 12:1. So you got to bring those tithes in the storehouse. But you see here, it says, I beseech thee, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, present your bodies, these vessels, as a living sacrifice, as the established covenant, holy, separated, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. This is our reasonable service. So with this act, we have to trust in the abundance. We have to trust in the abundance, the demonstration of our faith in God and the provisions to where we can, with this acknowledgement now, as we have come to him, and then the act of tithing reflects our belief in the promises of God to bless and provide those who honor him with their resources. So whether you be Abraham, you follow the footsteps of Abraham, it depends. Or you're going to follow the principles of Abraham through your tithing. See, both passages highlight the importance of this genuine obedience in response to God's calling. Genuine obedience. When you want to look at it another way, show you something. You can look at this another way. We can't overlook the fact that all of us don't see everything the same way. Let me get it. So I want to show it to you another way. We're going to go to Acts chapter 5. We're going to look at verse 1. And we're going to go all the way down to 5. The reason why I want you to see something, because I want you to see this the other way, the contrary way, what happens. So we got to look at this another way. Because we're going to encounter Ananias and Sapphira. And what happened with this couple deceitfully held back a portion. They held back a portion a portion, which we know is a tithe. They held back a portion, and they was using the sale of land. But we want to get a full understanding of that because it's always wrongly taught. So we want to understand. So let's go through this, and then we're going to have the conversation to where we can understand exactly what happened. It says, but a certain man named Ananias, and with Sapphira his wife, sold a possession and kept back part of the price, his wife also being privy to it, and brought a certain part and laid it at the apostles' feet. But Peter said, Ananias, why have Satan filled thy heart to lie to the Holy Ghost? You see what he's saying? He said, and kept back part of the price of the land. While I reminded I was not thy own. While it reminded it was not thy own. And after it was sold, was it not thy own power? Why hast thou conceived this thing in thy heart? Thou hast not lied unto men, but unto God. And Ananias heard these things and fell down and gave up the ghost. And great fear came upon them all that heard these things. It's an interesting event that happened there. The reason why, because Ananias and Sapphira, they deceitfully held back a portion. But we got to understand what the keys are. We got to understand how this framework was working out, because they used to sell a land and then they sold some property while pretending to offer a full amount to the Lord. They offering the full amount to the Lord, which is deception. That result, it came with severe consequences for them. So it drawed upon the principles of understanding the underlying issue in the story. See, because the story, as this couple sold some property for a price, but they decided to give a portion of the proceeds to the community of the followers of Christ. However, they misrepresented the amount that they received for the property, implying that they was giving the full amount and keeping part of it for themselves. Their sin was not held back. Their sin was not that held back a portion of the money. That wasn't their sin. They was free to do whatever they wanted to do with their property as they wish. So that's what Peter states in verse 4. He's telling them right up front. He says, while it remained, was it not thy own? Was it not thy own? And after it was sold, was it not thy own power? Why hast thou conceived to do this thing in thy heart? Thou hast not lied unto men, but unto God. It's telling him up front right there what happened. Because when you see these things, this is what's going on. So as Peter's telling him that, you lying to a separated body. That's who you're lying to. You're not lying to the man. You're lying to God. And you have people where they'll sit there and they'll do these things. They say, well, I'm going to give this money, but I'm not going to give all of it. I'm going to keep some of it back. But then if you're not going to give all of it, then you sit there and you just tell them, okay, well, I'm not giving you everything. I'm going to give you part of it. This is what I'm going to give you. That was in your power. So there's no reason to lie. There's no reason to come up with a lie for it. But people will do that to make it seem better. The same as you see here, it tells you in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 50, and why it didn't make no sense. It says, this now I say, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God. Neither do corruption inherit incorruption. Neither one inherits one or the other. And this is where it comes to where it has this preeminence in this incorruptible or this corruptible of a physical thing that's being compared to spiritual realities. Meaning is, when Peter asked Ananias to allow him to feel something, his heart, he lied. He didn't lie to Peter, but he was lying to the Holy Ghost. The sin, therefore, was an act of deceit and dishonesty, not the withholding of funds per se at all. He thought he was going to deceive the Holy Ghost. That was the focus. That was the point. So we see this here as it says right there, flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God anyway. So it's not about the physical versus spiritual material possessions. It's about deceitful hearts and attitudes that Ananias and Sapphira exhibited. That's what this whole account was, because they used the elements and they thought through those elements they were going to deceive the Holy Ghost. So when it goes back to Malachi chapter 3, looking at verse 10 again, he's telling you the same thing. If you were going to hold something back, you should have just said, "Bring ye all tithes, all your portions into the storehouse, that it may be meat in my house. Improve me now wherewith," because with all this knowledge that he's giving you, he want to be proven. So believers are all those portions of tithes. So the Lord's storehouse is the body. And the instruction emphasizes the importance of wholeheartedly and dedicating the offering unto God brings the honest in dealing with him, and it highlights the significance of giving in the sincerity of the generous spirit without deceit or hidden motives. See, even though when you're looking at another case, you can look at Cain. We'll look at Cain on another case, because Cain also did the same thing. When we look at Cain chapter 4, we'll see this here. Chapter 4, and we'll start at verse 3. And we'll see the same thing happen here. The same identical thing happened here. It says, in the process of time, it came to pass, Cain brought forth fruit. He brought forth the works of the ground. He brought forth fruit of the ground. He brought forth works of the ground, offering it unto the Lord. So he offered it unto the Spirit of God, to Jehovah. It's right here before us. And Abel, he also brought forth the firstlings of his flock and the fat thereof. He brought forth everything. It didn't matter. In the Lord, the Spirit of God had respect unto Abel's offering. But unto Cain, in his offering, he had no respect. And Cain was very raw, and his countenance fell. Why? What you going to get upset for? This is what a lot of us do. Because he said, bring all of it. Bring all of it. Don't you just bring what's of the ground. Don't just do that. It says, bring all the tithes into the storehouse. The same thing we just seen with Ananias and Sapphira. Together we can sit there and we can see this, how this, the spiritual lesson regarding sincerity, integrity in the offering presents that God is based on the elements alone. It's based on elements alone. It was fruit of the ground that he did. So you see Cain and Abel, the son of Adam and Eve, who brought forth the offering unto the Lord. Cain presented the offering from the fruit work of the ground. Abel's offering was the firstling of the flock, the fat thereof. And he accepted Abel's, but did not regard Cain's. So this disparity is attributed to the spirit that's behind the offering. It was behind the spirit that offered it. Representing the best of their flock, and the fat thereof signifies his sincere devotion and reverence to God. No matter what, good or bad, he brought it all there. So the contrast to Cain's offering, he just brought forth the fruits of the ground. Knowing the ground was cursed, but he lacked the same depth and genuine devotion. So the Lord had respect unto Abel's offering and disregarded Cain's, demonstrate the importance of presenting the offering of a pure heart and genuine faith. So as we see this here, when we look at Malachi chapter 3 and verse 10, again, it goes right back to the same identical thing. It goes back to it. Same thing. We're going to go back. That's why I said I should have just kept it there, because we're going to keep hitting this, because we're going to keep focusing it right there. Malachi chapter 3 verse 10 is going to keep saying the same thing, because he told us up front what we are to do. It says, bring ye all the tithes, good or bad. Didn't matter what it was, good or bad. You bring them all into the storehouse. Good or bad. This principle's offering of the portion is fully being honest. Bring all the tithes into the storehouse by showing the wisdom that was given by God. The followers of Christ demonstrate their trust in God's provision and contribute to the substance of his house. That's what this does. So the followers show God their faithfulness in pouring out a blessing when he honors, and when they honor him with a whole heart, they're the offering. So the same what we seen, same thing what we just seen with Acts chapter 5 verse 1 through 5 provides the contrary account with Ananias and Sapphira, where they sold their property for possession, then later conspired to keep back portions of it, of the proceeds, while pretending they offering the full amount. They attempt to deceive the apostles in the Holy Spirit. But they didn't deceive the apostles. They was trying to deceive the Holy Spirit. So Peter guided the Holy Spirit. He was being guided, but that discerned their deceit, and he exposed their lie. Served the same consequences they face, which highlights the importance of truthful and integrity and genuine devotion, which was their offering to God. It's right up front before us. So we can see collectively that these passages teach us about God, the value, the sincere, wholehearted offering to present with integrity and trust. These elements are important. The examples of Abel's offering is instructed in Malachi. These tithes are portions. The judgment that is based on Ananias and fire, those was cautions against deceit, hidden motives that we do. We have these hidden, insincere worship that emphasizes the need for honesty and transparency. But we sit there with genuine faith in our approach to presenting God's offering. When we come bring forth our offering with a pure heart, trust, integrity, we honor God, and we open ourselves to his blessings and favor, no matter what. No matter what. So in the case of Ananias and Sapphira, as they conspired and presented their partial offering for the full amount, they attempted to deceive both the community and God himself by falsely claiming that they had brought the entire proceeds for their property sale. Their actions violated the principles. The principles. These are the elements of honesty, integrity, wholehearted devotion God commands. So the story of this that underscores the genuine honesty and transparent devotion, which we see right there in Malachi chapter 3 and verse 10, we should bring all tithes into the storehouse. All of them. To fill these pages with the scriptures in which we encounter timeless principles. God offers this relationship with Jehovah. He offers that. So Deuteronomy with Malachi and Proverbs, we can get a better understanding to where it offers us valuable insight, responsibility to honor God's provision, and the blessings that flow from the wholehearted devotion as we go deeper into the journey through the verse by verse to discover the harmonious tapestry that illuminates the significance of being the stewardship and tithing and in reverence in a relationship with our Creator, God himself. So this 1422, thou should tithe, truly tithe, this set the stage for us. That set the stage for us. Thou should truly tithe of thy increase of thy seed of the field that bringeth forth year by year. That set the stage, and it reminds us of the importance of acknowledging God and his abundant provisions for our lives. So it calls upon the true tithe offering. It's right there before us. So this act is not giving only demonstrate our gratitude, but it reflects the trust in God's ongoing substance and care. So as we dive deeper and deeper into this subject that we've been tithing, we can find these profound connections of Malachi chapter 3 and 10, which invites us to bring tithes into the storehouse, into our bodies. These elements have to be in our body. They're not there, then you're not part of God's. If those elements are not there, you're not part of God's. In fact, we can find out even more when we go through Scripture. We get a better understanding on what things are and how things work. When we look at this in Proverbs chapter 3, but we're going to go down to verse 9. We're going to take it from there. We're going to start getting some more information, but we need more elements on what we need to be doing. So take this here, and we're going to take a little bit outer look at this. It says, honor the Lord, honor the Spirit of God with thy substance. You got to honor him with your substance. And with the first fruits. Exactly, yeah, that's why you got to bring everything in. No matter what it is, you got to bring it in. With the first fruits in thy increase. So shall thy barn be filled with plenty, and the press shall burst out with new wine. Yeah, because it's going to burst out with new wine with your faith. But that's talking about everything what we need to know. Spiritually, we should understand the spiritual side meaning of this first fruits. First fruits, write it down again. These are your first works. These are your first works. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 9 and 10. This gives you a deeper significance. It conveys the importance of hovering in honoring the Lord with your first and best and what we have, whether of our resources, our talents, times, or action. Doesn't matter. Those are our first works. Talents, first works. Time, first works. Actions, first works. It emphasized the principles of giving to God's best and dedicating our initial fruits of our labors to Him by honoring the Lord with first fruits. We demonstrate our guidance and trust, our commitment to Him. So we are blessed. And it solidifies that our hearts recognize that God's sovereignty and provision and rightful place in our lives. This is what we have to remember. This is what we have to understand. This is why we got to go through what we go through. First works. The spiritual sense of first work, it encompasses various aspects of our lives. We can refer to the first and foremost acts of worship. What is that? We can react and we can act to worship, devotion, and obedience we offer God. Those are frameworks. Those are part of the framework. It implies to the initial efforts and intentions, which the action showed that's directed towards honoring Him. So just as first fruits in the agricultural arena, we're the most valuable representative of an entire harvest, our first works is a result of the elements being used. It's telling us the same thing. It's giving us the same silhouette picture. It don't matter. It doesn't matter. So just as, again, those first fruits in the agricultural is the most valuable and is representative of an entire harvest. But the same thing with our first works is the result of the elements that we use, and it symbolizes our devotion, 1, loyalty, 2, and commitment to God, in God who is our architect in all the areas of our lives. You see how simple this is? It's not complex if you really understand it. It's not complex if you understand it. This symbolizes those elements: devotion, loyalty, and commitment to God as our architect in these areas. We pulling those elements out the blueprint that's needed. So with that understanding, we got to have a sense of first works, which encompasses many very areas, which is the best to God. We need to get a broad thing and a broad example on what we need to do. So some of these same elements on what we need to do, we want to write them down. I'm going to take my time, but we need to write them down. We're going to take my time, but we need to write them down. We need to write these down. One of the elements we need is time. Time. That time we need, time is dedicated our portion of your day using that element. That time you need is an element that you need, but what you need it for prayer, meditation, seeking God's guidance. You need that. So you have to use that element. That element has to be used. By prioritizing time with God, you honor Him and you invite His presence and wisdom in every aspect of your day. But you have to have that element there. If you're not using that element, so it's just like you walking around with a hammer without nails. You working with tools without you don't have no tools, and you're trying to work on your car. Same thing with the elements, the time that you need. So if you got time, then that time you're going to sit there, you're going to dedicate to God with prayer and meditation. This is why I sit there and I talk to people all the time about this. This is why we had the same problem. And why I said that the first time, even when I said last week. I meant what I said. See, because people sit there and they feel that they can do it the way they want to. This is why a lot of us lack the understanding. This is why a lot of us lack the spiritual understanding that we need to be with God. One of the other elements that we truly need is this. We need talents. Talents. Talents is a use that God-given talents, our abilities to serve Him and bless others, whether these elements. So these elements is certain things. It can be music, art, writing, and other skills. But we offer those first, the best. We offer those to glorify God, to bring joy to others. We have to do that. These things we have to do, but most people sit there and want to play this game. We have to understand what these elements are. Another element we need is knowledge gain. Another element we need is knowledge gain. See how that works out. The knowledge gain, this element. It's a valuable, and this element is more valuable than rubies. Knowledge gain is way more valuable than rubies. And we are to give the first portion as our offering to God, as an act of tithing, which demonstrates your trust in your provision and acknowledging the rightful place and the source of your resources. That's what I'm doing here right now. Makes me look super, super, super smart, but I'm not. Everybody can gain the same thing, but it depends on what your dedication is. That's what it depends on. If your dedication is right, then you can gain just as much knowledge as anybody else. But you got to value his knowledge more than rubies. You got to value his knowledge more than money. You got to value his knowledge more than cars. You got to value his knowledge more than a house. His elements is more valuable than anything that is tangible in this world. And if you value that over there, there's no way he's going to give it. It's that straightforward. We also got another element. We got the element of relationships. Element of relationships. How do you do that? Prioritize God with your relationships and seeking his guidance. Interaction with family, friends, colleagues. You can show love, forgiveness, and kindness. Your first response in reflecting what? The character of Christ. That's what you're going to be reflecting. The character of Christ based on relationships. These elements is important. You have one of the main one is decision making. This element is extremely important because this one you're seeking God's wisdom and guidance. His blueprint of the architecture. This is what you're going to be learning in the back. This is what you're going to be learning in the class. Decision making of God's wisdom, guidance, the blueprint, the architect, which makes it important decisions to present plans that desires of him first, seeking the will and trusting in him and to direct your path. So you see how this illustrates that this concept of offering first works even for God and showing you how it's going to, by dedicating our time, our talents, our knowledge gain, our relationship, our decisions. So as we see this here with Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 9, it tells you, honor the Lord, honor the Spirit of God with thy substance, with the first fruits and all thy increase. It's right there. It's right before us. Right before us. And we can build upon this foundation. So as we build upon this foundational principles, Proverbs 3, 9, and 10, it ensures by honoring God in this way, our barns will be filled with plenty, and our press will be overflowed with new wine. So throughout this exploration, we discovered this interconnect tapestry of wisdom, illustrating the significance of the steward trust, that this gratitude to where we can have this walk of faith. So this call wholeheartedly and dedicated to where we can increase the resource that the Lord echoes across the pages of Scripture, inviting us to embrace a lifestyle, not a religion, and to generously be reverencing him as we journey through the verse to verse to remind us of the abundance of the blessings that await those who are faithfully honoring God's provisions. It's plain right before us. So we got to dive into the framework of wisdom within Deuteronomy, Malachi, and Proverbs, uncovering the profound insight in the offer of stewardship of tithing. The bountiful blessings that flow through the hearts of God, and together shows that we will embark and transform the exploration on how he can honor God's provision in the experience and the richness of the fullness of our lives. We have to understand these things, and we get a lot better. So as we encounter the framework, we keep visiting more and more, and we keep going deeper and deeper and deeper into Scripture to understand a better thing on what we need to be doing. So the same thing is, as we look at this, and we're going to see something in Sirach chapter 35, But we want verse 7. We're going to go down to verse 9. Shows us. It says, the sacrifice of a just man is acceptable, and the memorial thereof shall never be forgotten. Give the Lord his honor with a good eye, with a good understanding, and diminish not the first fruits of thy hand. In all thy gifts show a cheerful countenance, and dedicate thy tithes with gladness. Don't hold it back. Don't hold these back. So as we encounter this, we should be generously giving back to God in accordance with what we have received. That's the knowledge that he had given, that we have grown in. We need to give it back, because we got to give this back to some of the other ones to where we can germinate them to where they can grow. So this spiritual teaching reminds us how we need to have the first principles of the gratitude and stewardship, where we can acknowledge that everything we possess is a gift from God. Everything we possess is a gift from God. And it calls us to offer up our resources, our talents, the blessings back to God, to where we can spiritually and generously give in abundance. So it urges us to give our service to God as living sacrifices as generously as we can. It recognizes that the Lord is the one who repays us with spiritual principles aligned in this concept. Tithing offering is a profound thing that we look at right here in 22. It says, thou shalt truly tithe of all thy increase, that thou bringest forth year by year. As Deuteronomy instructs us to tithe the increase of our seed, Sirach encourages us to do this generously and allow what we have received, emphasizes the importance of honoring God's provision, recognizing that our giving is not vain, but be repaid through the Lord. So as we look at Sirach, it warns us also of offering bribe, being offered by bribes. These things, these lines with Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 9 shows us what we need to be doing all the time. We got to honor God with all thy substance. With all thy substance. Not some of it. We got to honor God with thy substance. All of it. In the first fruits of all thy increase, we have to bring all of it there. This verse highlights the importance of gift giving to God. The integrity and honesty in avoiding any form of deception, manipulation of our worship. It reminds us that the Lord, he's a righteous judge. He do not show partiality. So overall, when we look at this, sacrifice, establish the covenant of a just man is acceptable. So when we establish a covenant and you're just, is acceptable. It's a memorial thereof and never be forgotten. Deuteronomy 14:22, we've been going through. You're going to tithe all of that. Proverbs 3:9 emphasizes the spiritual principles that we generously in stewardship and the integrity of our offering. It encourages us to give back to God with a grateful heart, acknowledging our provision and trusting in his faithful repayment. This is why it's so important. So with this, we looked at those, and we hope that everybody understood this and understood what was going on. We understood more so what was happening there. I'm trying to sit there to see. So hopefully we understood that in a clear way. So with that, we're going to end here, and we'll be picking this up next week. So the same thing is, I do want to let people know a couple of things going to happen with this teaching here. A couple of things is going to happen with this teaching right here. This teaching is, I have a new, we changed the name of the site. The site is changed over to where, from Sinai to today. So you can see that over at King James Bible University, but you'll need to link to it, because as soon as this finish up, what this is going to do, this video here, we're going to start doing from Sinai to today is going to be over there. Because we're going to be doing the legal framework over there, and it'll be coming out once a week. Do where we can do it, but then we're going to have our classes, not this week, but our classes will be starting after that week. After this week, it will be starting to where we will be having the language class, which is the one that shows you the architecture. That's the one we want. So the same thing as I said, if you want to make sure that you're part of that class, and I always hate to say it this way, but people who you might just came over, you might be new here, you will end up sitting this one out, because if you don't put in, but then we receive emails from you and that you want to be part of the class and we don't know who you are, we will not accept it, because we don't know who you are. So that's why we're very cautious on who we let in there, because we do know a lot of camps like to flow through here, and camps, as I said, I see them in a whole different light. But I'm saying to each and every person, the ones who is looking, make sure that you turn that in. Turn in your documentation by tomorrow by 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So hopefully that each and every one of you guys, I just want to make sure, see, because I'm going to find out here or find out in the class. But did everybody understand what this legal framework is? That's a yes or no. Did everybody understand what the legal framework is? Because I just showed you the legal framework and the elements that was being used. So I'm just trying to make sure that everybody understand it. We got everybody with eyes. Good. So I know anybody that's in the class, I know I shouldn't have to be going back over that. I shouldn't have to be going back over that again. So we just going to make sure that. So as long as everybody understands it, that's good. So make sure you review it, but make sure you subscribe over there, because the other lessons for this every week will be over there. The lessons for next week will always be over there. And I do see some people where they're saying no, but just like I said, I'm not going to really go in the back, because it really, I see it really wasn't really beneficial to help many people, because most people go back there and they didn't really have many questions. So right now what we'll do, we'll see what happens. So right now we'll finish this, we'll go out from here. But as you go through this, study this, look at it. But this is actually going to be moved over to the from Sinai today to Sinai to today. That's where this is going to be moved to. So it's going to come off as soon as they finish rendering out. It's going to be removed, and it's going to be over there, and then you can review it from there. So with that, I'll say to each and every person, until next time, I appreciate everybody that was here, and we look for an exciting thing that we're going to be inviting in. We're going to be coming into a lot more later, because we're going to be going into a whole nother aspect. So with that, I say to each and every person, until next time, shalom.